Recorded in Little Italy, Louisiana. Welcome to Pinstripe Alley, the official Mobcast with A.P. Fanini. Ladies and gentlemen. I don't know why I used a German accent. I don't know, I'm having one of those days. But welcome to Pinstripe Alley, the official Mobcast with me, that fucking guy. A.P. Fanini. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have a phenomenal podcast. Well, I want to say all of them are phenomenal, but today I'm talking about something very special, or a group of very special people. And by special, I mean sadistic, sociopathic murderers, part of a group called Cosa Nostra. Before we do anything today, or get right into the Mobcast, you already know what I'm about to do, and it's justified as well. Thank everyone. I want to thank everybody out there who bought a copy of my book, The Gatekeepers, Part 1 and 2. Thank you guys so much for that. I appreciate it once again. Thank you once again, 5 stars. Another week of 5 stars on Amazon. Thank you guys. Thank you for purchasing the Kindle. And once again, thank you for all the messages. I didn't expect that many messages or that many people to tell me, like, personally. Some of you, like I said, I know, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And some of you, I don't know from Adam, I don't know from Eve, or that drunk janitor from 7-Eleven. But if that is you, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I really appreciate, like, the people who have even helped promote the book who didn't have to. Jesus, thank you so much. Thank you for devoting a little of your time to help me. And I really do mean that, all jests aside. But now that those jests have been pulled aside, let's pull them right back in. And let's get down to Mobcast today. I will give the information for the book at the end of the Mobcast because we got to get right into this. Today on the Mobcast, we are talking about a group of individuals from one of the original 5 families. We're actually talking about one of the original 5 families. But before we do that, and I don't think I've gone into this too much, I wanted to talk about real quick who started the mob to begin with, the mob that we know today. Because before there was a commission of mobsters, the 5 bosses of the 5 families that ran it, there was actually 2 main men that started out as or started the families in the beginning of the Italian gang days, before it was the aka mafia. It was actually founded by 2 men, a dude named Salvatore, or they called him Toto the Acchia, and Giuseppe Morello. Now, I'm not going to go too much into these guys because, to be 100% honest with you, I could make an entire podcast about each one of these guys, which I might in the future, I don't know. But for the most part today, the reason why I bring these 2 men up is because when these 2 men fell away from being the guys who ran, I'm sorry, I'm completely having a brain fart here. When these guys fell away from what they were doing, it was taken over by another family. And or it was taken over by the group of the 5 families, and this specific family was taken over. It was called the Mangano family. So when Lucky Luciano formed the commission and split what was remaining, like I said, there's a lot more to it, but I'll get into that. This is just the paraphrased, barely scraping the surface of the entire 5 families' origin story. But when it comes to the history of these 5 families, one of these specific families not only made a legitimately notorious is the word I'll use, amount of money. And I say notorious because the ways that they did it were absolutely bloodthirsty. They were savage. They were, let's just say I will basically put them under a classification of people in this situation. Within these 5 families, they are the one family out of the group that made the most impact, that made the most noise. And most of the time when you mention the Gambino family, people automatically like, oh yeah, I've heard of the Gambinos. And then some people will go even further to say their first thought is John Gotti, which is understandable because when you got a mob boss who's supposed to be keeping his mouth shut about the criminal organization that he's with, walking around the streets of New York, waving at the camera, wearing $5,000 suits, it's kind of hard to, live that inconspicuous life. And so that's the Gambino family, especially under Carlo Gambino, or especially after he passed away, I would say, is, it was just all bets are off. These guys were literally, I would say, the front runner for the families. And they started out as a group called the Mangano family. So when it all started out, of the 5 families, when it all fell away from these 2 men I mentioned earlier, Morello and Lupo the Wolf, when they all fell away, the 5 families that were left were the Maranzano family, the Profaci family, the Mangano family, the Luciano family, and the Gagliano family. So all of that mouthful of families, that all turned into the Bonanno family, the Colombo family, the Gambino family, the Genovese family, and the Lucchese family. The Gambino family, originally, it's been ran by many people, but today I'm going to talk about some of the key players that were in the Gambino family, and I'm also going to talk about what exactly they did to become so notorious. And I'm sorry, I was also reading about Nicky Scarfo here. I'm actually going to mention this gentleman here too. He was a boss in the Gambino family, but he was also just absolutely insane. The first person that I did want to talk about, though, is it's Carlo Gambino. And the reason why is they got their likeness from Carlo Gambino's name. So we're going to talk about him for just a minute. Not going to touch too much on him because his life is pretty textbook when it comes to, being a mafia boss. And, well, textbook's not a good word, but everything that he did was pretty much, he was pretty much an old school mobster. And he kept things the way they were supposed to be, as the original guys did when La Cosa Nostra was in its infancy stage. And that's to keep your mouth shut about everything. This is why he died of natural causes, and John Gotti died of throat cancer during his 100-year sentence in prison. These gentlemen, all of them, who were under the tutelage of Carlo Gambino, pretty much had the same kind of style, the same kind of air for the most part. And he taught them pretty much everything that he knew. Under his reign, the Gambino family was very, very abundant. Financially, respect-wise, in the streets, he was a very, very hard dude. And in the public, he was just a nice old man. As a matter of fact, if you see a picture of Carlo Gambino, he has such a warm and happy smile. Little would you ever know that warm and happy smile would probably cut your fucking head off and leave the body somewhere in the harbor. That escalated quickly. Now, you know for a fact, if anyone who's been listening to this Mobcast or knows anything about the mob, you know that the biggest thing that you cannot do ever is, if you want to remain alive, is to rat to the police. You never want to do that. That's breaking omerta, that's breaking the code, and it's, in their eyes, it's just kind of being a dick because somebody's going to prison. Well, under Carlo Gambino, he himself, as a boss, also had to worry about these types of things all the time. And he was a boss of the family during the time of the McClellan hearings in 1963. And this is whenever organized crime really began, like the actual family tree, the actual, branching off and the chain of command and all of these different things being understood about the mafia. This is when they came to the light during the McClellan hearings. Something else that we could definitely make a mobcast about. But Carlo Gambino, he, for the most part of his life, he tried to make sure that the financial was in order and this and that, so much to the point that upon his death, his final decision, or one of his final decisions literally as a living man, actually caused such a rift within the Gambino family that there was death involved at some point. A lot of people remember, and I've spoken about this man in another video that I made on my YouTube channel on Mob Gods, Hard Hitters of the American Mafia. I did the video I did about John Gotti and anyone else who kind of keeps their ear to the ground is big Paul Castellano. This man was very close to Carlo Gambino, had his trust. He was a businessman. Carlo Gambino knew that he was a businessman. He knew that he was smart. He knew that he was good with numbers. He knew he had the type of persona and the kind of background that would be extremely advantageous to the family and to everyone around them. And he knew that. So upon his death, instead of making someone that they knew for a fact that he knew would be well respected, or anyone else for that matter, he made Paul Castellano the boss of the Gambino crime family. A lot of people didn't like this. One person in particular who didn't like it was John Gotti, but we will get into Paul Castellano at some point, but in the Mobcast. But the thing about Carlo Gambino that needs to be remembered is that he died hoping, or he died with the best of intentions, that his family would move on financially, silently, with a man that was recognized as Paul Castellano's actual nickname was the Docile Don, because that's exactly what he was. He was docile. He was very serene. He was not larger than life. The complete opposite, like night and day with someone like John Gotti, which John Gotti was like night and day with most mobsters who had common sense in the first place, but whatever. For more on John Gotti, check out that video on my YouTube channel. But, when he became the boss, when he became Castellano being the boss, it absolutely infuriated John Gotti. And so, being the mobsters that they are, as time went on, the thing that broke Paul Castellano and that made his murder something that was finally a tipping point for John Gotti was that when Neil de la Croce, John Gotti's mentor and personal friend for many, many years, and also a friend of the family, one of the members of the mob, a capo regime, when he was in his funeral, when he passed away, and John Gotti was at the funeral, when Paul Castellano did not show up to this man's funeral, that pretty much marked his death contract. Look at me, I said I wasn't going to talk about Paul, and here we are. Fuck it. So when Paul Castellano was murdered, this was all at the hands of John Gotti, Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was John Gotti's underboss. But like I said, we'll get to that. So Carlo Gambino passed away hoping for the best, and what he got was a volcano of mob war and death, and pretty much his entire family falling apart. Not to say that the Gambino family doesn't still exist today, but it will never be as prominent as it was. So let's go back a little bit in time till we talk about another key player. This key player, Albert Anastasia. Now this is a good time back. This man was born in 1902 and was murdered in 1957. He was a hitman, and the eventual crime, the boss of the family. He was a co-founder of something called Murder Inc. Now, for those of you who don't know what Murder Inc. is, I could go down the list of people who are in it and all the things that they've done, but I'm just going to tell you, it is a group of contract killers. And these contract killers who were in the mafia, Anastasia being one of them, who had nicknames like the Earthquake, the One-Man Army, the Mad Hatter, and Lord High Executioner. So definitely sounds like somebody I want to hang out with at a birthday party, right? This dude, in his early time, was the one who began to make these types of rackets that they were working with so prominent. And their rackets, mostly just like anything else, are pretty much in the same... What am I looking for here? In the same ballpark as anything else. So when we look at the Gambino crime family, they were into everything. And racketeering, which we all know, like racketeering is the actual charge itself, but it can be put under so many different things because of the RICO stature. Extortion, something that they're very famous for. Give me your money or I'll burn your fucking coffee shop down. Fraud, illegal gambling, money laundering, which a lot of these people, the mafia particularly, were some of the first to actually use local areas like businesses to launder their money, or their own businesses to launder their money. So that part is actually, all of it's, has a level of genius to it, or degree, but that's pretty ingenious for these people at the time to come up with something that like out of this world. And I say that because back then there were so many limited resources when it came to like financial transactions to allocate. So they really just they grabbed that part of racketeering by the balls if you go back and look at certain parts of history within the mafia. Murder, obviously. Robbery, yes. Drug trafficking, looked down upon, but still done. Fencing, basically stealing shit and selling it again. Truck hijacking, loan sharking, prostitution, and pornography. When it comes to the drugs, looked down upon, they were definitely looked down upon, but so many people saw dollar signs instead. And prostitution and pornography didn't become like a huge thing till the 70s. But with all that being said, and all the things that they were involved in, Albert Anastasia, being a part of Murder, Inc., and this group of contract killers. And by the way, the group of contract killers that met, you would think, well, where did they meet? Where was their headquarters? What was it based out of? It was based out of a candy store in Brooklyn. Yes. Murder, Inc., the men that have such a long history, such an immense profile and background and shoddy reputation, met in a place where they sell fucking shock tarts. They met in a candy store. I don't know why that blows my mind. That may be simple to someone else, but to me, I think that is absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, for him to become the boss, it was probably around 1951. No, it was around 1951, not probably. So 1951, Albert Anastasia actually, stepped forward. He had the U.S. Senate actually had summoned him to answer some questions at the Kafalva hearings, and he refused to do it. So this is, obviously stepping up to omerta and keeping his part. This man ordered several, they would say, there's really no way to know exactly how many murders you're involved in whenever you don't take part in them personally, but you're still involved in it. 1952, ordered the murder of Arnold Schuster, who actually identified Willie Sutton, which resulted in Sutton's arrest. And Sutton, closely involved with Albert Anastasia. So the first thing he's going to do is have this man killed. That's just a very loose and simple explanation of what this man is like. Okay, so much like many other mob bosses, being one of the people who actually was there to get this type of thing off the ground for the rest of the mob, that's what he'll always be remembered for, is always being a hard hitter. However, you live by the sword, you're certainly going to die by it. He was assassinated. 56th Street and 7th Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. This was the barbershop at the Park Sheraton Hotel. And there is actually a scene in the movie The Irishman, the Netflix exclusive, with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and a plethora of other actors, mostly Italian. Ray Romano's in the movie. It's a really long movie. Some people shat on it pretty hard. I guess I can understand why, and I definitely respect your opinion, but I thought the movie was good. Anyway, there's a scene in the movie where they walk in while Anastasia's getting his face shaved, his hair cut. Two men walk in, you hear gunshots, they walk right out. That's pretty much what happened. That's what happened. They walked in. The movie was pretty generous, though. You hear a couple of shots and they walked out. According to the authorities at the time, and this is what they have documented, after the first ray of bullets, he, like Anastasia was a pretty tough guy. After they first emptied bullets in him and, for the kill, he lunged at him. He's like, he comes off the chair. He's like, oh, motherfucker. And then the next thing Anastasia attacked the reflections in the mirror. So at first he went at him, but he went right into the wall. Mirror bust to pieces. He attacked the wall mirror. And then after that, the gunmen were like, this is it. They continued peppering this man with bullets until he finally fell on the floor dead. So the movie wasn't completely accurate because they fucking filled this dude with ammunition until even his spirit couldn't get up. And when they left, that was it. So Albert Anastasia, quite a pioneer in the mafia. After him, in came Carlo Gambino. Now, I didn't go through these chronologically, but I just wanted to touch base on a couple of them. But Albert Anastasia, Carlo Gambino came in right after. And then Carlo Gambino, which I mentioned earlier, is the one who appointed Paul Castellano. So now that I mentioned Paul Castellano and we know that he was murdered, let's pick up right there. Because after Carlo Gambino had passed away and made Paul Castellano the boss of the family, and he had his own underboss with him and everything, and John Gotti, not only was he going to take action, he made the most noise, obviously. And he's the one who had the biggest problem with Paul Castellano being the boss. And so, at a time when the mob was already having their foundation shaken by not only the police, by not only Operation Donnie Brasco, but mainly from insurrection within their own family. Biggest problem that they were having at the time. Paul Castellano entered the family in the hopes that he would turn it into more of a business, much like the previous boss had wished. They called him the Howard Hughes of the mob, called it, Big Paulie. But that all ended on December 16th, 1985. But we will definitely get to that. The conspiracy, for Paul Castellano, he had several people murdered under his donship, if you will. But like I said before, not much of a killer. So with this, quote, soft man being in charge in the driver's seat, this is going to cause some problems. And so John Gotti decided to make a couple of moves himself. And the move that he made was Paul Castellano was leaving Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. He and his underboss. They were, just stepping out after a meal. Sammy Gravano, who was over the hit squad, basically had these men gun him and his underboss down in front of the steakhouse. And the reason why I feel like that's the most important is because it proved two things to himself and everyone around. Number one, there's obviously no honor among thieves and killers. And number two, when he became boss, when Paul Castellano's body hit the ground and days later, and everyone knew it was Gotti stepped into the mantle of the boss and nobody said a word. Nobody cared. Nobody batted an eye. They were like, hey, you heard about Paul Castellano getting whacked outside of Sparks Steakhouse? And they're like, yeah. Gotti did it, right? Obviously. He's the boss now. Yeah. Fuck it. And that was it. Everybody went on with their lives. It was nothing. The majority of the people in the Gambino felt that he was handed that title and did not earn it. And didn't think he was tough enough to do it. So with that being said, with him out of the way, with Paul Castellano murdered at the entrance of Sparks Steakhouse, and he is completely wiped out of the history forever, Gotti steps into the mantelpiece and becomes the boss of the Gambino family. John Gotti, and a lot of people don't realize this, and I've made this very, very clear in a lot of podcasts and videos that I've done. John Gotti, while being one of the most well-known and probably well-respected by people who know him and who don't, did not have a lot of common sense. And what do I mean by that? Exactly what I mentioned earlier. This is a kind of guy who, and this is 100% factual, you can look this up, this guy would change his suit after dinner. So he would have dinner at a restaurant, he'd walk in with a $5,000 suit, but he would have somebody carry in a dry clean bag with another suit in there, which was as expensive or more. And so he wanted to be seen by the public, and he wanted to be seen by people who were around, because I don't know if you guys know this, but when John Gotti was walking the streets in New York, there were people with cameras, there were news reporters, there were the media, journalists, fans. Fuck, he had fans. He had people outside of his trial when he was like being the court system, the FBI, and all these people were just raining down and telling him, you have 100 years right now sitting on this table and you're in deep shit and we're going to indict you. People are out front with signs, free John Gotti, and and I don't know why, because he'll kill them. You know what I'm saying? Like he would probably he'd probably kill all of them for like $10. So yeah, he was not a smart guy, and I will say that forever. He was an idiot. But with him in the driver's seat, though, he was definitely a tough dude. He was definitely street smart. He definitely had a guy on his side, his friend Sammy Salvatore the Bull Gravano. And Sammy the Bull Gravano, known notoriously for only one thing, really, and that's being probably the first testifying witness, and he was on TV admitting to 19 murders. And John Gotti had to eat that. But when he became boss, with this man under his arm, there was nothing that would stand in his way. There was no one that was too good to be eliminated. Anyone that stepped on Gotti's toes, and fun fact, I mentioned this in the previous video, John Gotti tried to steal a cement mixer when he was youthful, in his adolescence. He tried to steal a cement mixer and he dropped it on his foot, right? So this guy's limping around with a fucked up foot because he tried to steal a giant cement mixer, but like being the charismatic guy that Gotti was, and he certainly was that, he decided to make that limp into his signature strut. That's why he walked that way. That's why they call it the Gotti walk or the Gotti strut. And just think that all started because some 14-year-old jerk-off tried to move a cement mixer and ran his foot over, I don't know. I find that absolutely fascinating as a piece of human psychology. But anyway, with that being said, he got very, very angry, sloppy, and very unaware, and that's the perfect word to use, that everything he had, or almost everything he had, was being wired. And the reason why that I'm spending so much time with Gotti talking about him is because not only was he such a loud figure, but this was during the time, I really feel like, and a lot of other people say this, this was the last of the mafia days, was John Gotti. This was the last of when they were a whole. After that was in shambles after they brought him the Teflon Don, to the ground. So they called him the Teflon Don for the longest time because every charge that the federal government shot at him, it would bounce off. It would just bounce off. He would never get charged. He would walk free. He'd say his little charismatic little dialogue. He would have nothing on him. There would be no witnesses because the majority of them were floating in the harbor or chopped up somewhere in a junk shop. Literally, that's how John Gotti worked. And to bring all this back to originally, so whenever he did get indicted, and whenever he was brought to to court, and the fans were out front, it was a big deal. The media was everywhere. He was found guilty, and they had dude, somebody really had some animosity, you can tell, because they came on TV right after John Gotti had been indicted, and he said, I can't remember right offhand if it was somebody who was part of the FBI or part of the federal prosecuting team, but they came on TV and they said, that guy that you call the Teflon Don, right? Because all the charges bounce off, you can't call him Teflon Don anymore. You got to call him Velcro because every charge stuck. If I was John Gotti and I saw that on TV, I'd be like, my very last will and testament is for somebody to shove a cactus up his ass. That was one of the biggest slap in the faces I have ever seen in my entire life, like as far as like on TV, like or nationally like that, because that was fucking wild. So John Gotti gets indicted because, and one of the main reasons why is because his right hand, who's known for ratting on him, that's who he ratted on him. He went on TV and told the whole world that he was responsible for 19 murders. So, and he's like, and that's probably just a fraction of what they were actually involved in. But John Gotti, not only having his voice on tape, nearly 70 hours of stuff just from a car ride, right? Just from what was in the car, how 70 hours of shit on him. Plus, they have him on tape dogging and really being condescendingly, that's an improvement. That's a nice way of putting it. Really talking some major trash about Sammy Gravano, his underboss. With this being said, it went far enough in Sammy's head for him to be like, dude, you know what? I'm not dying for this. I'm not dying for this man. This is all bullshit. I'm all yours. And that's what happened. And Sammy the Bull, from that point on, I never thought personally I would ever see a day, and this is a side note, but this is Sammy the Bull, actually has this man, which his YouTube channel is Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, the biggest rat in fucking history, has a YouTube channel. And the last time I checked, he's getting like 350,000 views. I say good on him. I think that's dope, but Jesus Christ, bro. But I guess 6ix9ine still sells music, so right, who gives a shit? Anyway, so of all the people that are prominently known or so well known, John Gotti, obviously, hands down. And right behind him, especially if we're speaking the Gambino family, right behind him, Sammy the Bull Gravano. Because both of these men are like notorious for doing certain things. The only thing is like out of the two of them, I would not want to be notorious for what Sammy is known for. I've watched a few of his videos. It looks like old habits die hard. So, yeah. And with that being said, since I recently sat down of Gambino family quarrels, I'm actually making a video soon regarding Michael Francese, or Francis, however you want to pronounce his name. He is, and for those of you who don't know, he and Sammy the Bull Gravano, the guy, the underboss for John Gotti, they sat down and they called it a sit down because both these guys are real old school mobsters. Michael Francese, son of Sonny Francese from the Colombo family, the man who was over the large gas tax scheme that made him $10 million a week. And happily to tell all of you, I'm happy to say that the next video that I'm going to make for Mob Gods is going to be about him. And I tossed a few things back and forth, but Michael Francese is definitely going to have the third video because his life is amazing. And he's just to be real, he's a very congenial person, and I understand he has, several million views on his channel. He's a great storyteller, and I promise I don't work for him. I'm not getting any, I don't even know the guy, but I mean, I have such an affinity for his videos and his stories, and for him to talk and how he's turned his life around, and you don't hear a lot about that you'll hear a lot about that around a lot of mobsters who come out and say that they were in the life at this point today. But there was a sit down between Sammy the Bull and Michael Francese. Things got very heated. I watched the majority of the sit down, but it just goes to show that some people have moved on from that type of life, and some people, being 60, 70, 80 years old, are still neck deep in that type of mentality. It got heated. I will say hats off to Michael Francese for keeping his cool, but it just goes to show, you know what? I'm going to leave it alone for now. Michael Francese, next video for Mob Gods. Go into a huge, complete rundown of everything that he's done and just how rich this guy was. But like I said, another video. So moving on, I do want to say also, in the Gambino family, a lot of the people that were in the Gambino family, and they were a very large family. I think it was Michael Francese that said that there were people who were made all the time. There were people who were brought into the family, and they weren't earners. They didn't do anything. I mean, they made some money, but you had some earners and some people were just, and Carlo Gambino, the man whose likeness it's named after, I feel like it was named after him because of all the things that you really go back and look at, of all the traditional routes that he takes in his leadership as the boss of the Gambino family, you can tell that he tries to not only stay traditional, but he tries to keep it very structured and a certain way that things are supposed to be, because he comes from a time when inconspicuousness and cruciality were so important. So that's the reason why it was so prominent under him. So I guess when the old schoolers are gone and the new guys take over, just everything goes to shit. I hope that's not the case for everything, but it definitely was for this. And so even to this day, the Gambino family, they still exist. They do still exist. They actually, you know what? Let me go ahead and this is one thing I definitely have to pull up. You know, this isn't scripted, so I don't give a shit. Let's see. So yeah, I definitely have to figure out who runs it now. Okay, here we go. So for the past 15 years, although Peter Gotti was considered the official boss of the Gambino family, other powerful gangsters essentially ignored him, said law enforcement officials today, and the Gambino family is reputedly, look at me, Jesus. The Gambino family is reputedly led by Dominic Cefalu of Brooklyn. Cefalu. See, you can tell this is scripted because I don't know how to pronounce his fucking name. So Peter Gotti was looked at. Anyway, I didn't really bring that up to bring up the history of the current mobsters. I brought it to bring up the fact that, like, even though they have been through so many trials and tribulations, you know, doing what they do, they still try to keep that spirit alive. A lot of these people now, or a lot of the wise guys and mobsters and men who are still involved in organized crime or even somewhat connected to La Cosa Nostra, and this has been said by many mobsters who have done interviews, is that they try to stay away from the killing factor of the mafia. Not to say that they still wouldn't do it, because I believe they still got it in them, but they try to stay away from the killing factor because that is what draws the most attention. And what they face today as mafia, especially someone like the Gambino family, who is so into making their mark and making it loudly, these people who are actually doing the whole racketeering thing in the current, even I'd say 2021 now, remain extremely quiet. And for good reason, because the surveillance now is out of this world. If surveillance had been at the level it was in the 70s, 80s, you know, during the time of people like Nicky Scarfo, who was also a boss in the Gambino family. And I can't believe I didn't bring him up. And I think I wanted to earlier. Before I hit you with the closer for the Gambino family, let me talk about Nicky Scarfo a minute. Little Nicodemo Scarfo. Without saying too much about him, there is something very specific I want to bring up. And I might have brought this up in something previous, but here we go. His nephew, Philip Leonetti, was on TV. And every time I see Phil Leonetti, I never see his face because it's always blacked out. And I'm like, man, why is he the only one that's blacked out? Like, what? Well, when you have someone in your family like Nicky Scarfo, who was his uncle, you probably want to keep your face blacked out everywhere you go. This man basically raised him to be a killer. Nicky Scarfo killed his way into the mob boss chair. But before doing that, one of the favorite things, Phil Leonetti always gives recollections about the times that, the things they've done together. And he's always, explained like he's been involved in murders and involved in this, and this. Sure. Okay. But when he said that Nicky Scarfo, his uncle, took so much pleasure in the murder of men, and to the extent that when he would kill someone, in a certain situation, Phil Leonetti explained that he shot a man, and Nicky Scarfo leaned down to his body and put his ear to his chest, and he leaned back up and he said, "Phil, he's still alive, still breathing. Shoot him again." And so he did. And so Phil shot him again. And then Nicky Scarfo slowly leans down and put his ears to this guy's chest. And he's like, "I love this. I love this shit." And Phil's like, "What do you love?" "That moment when you hear their last breath, when you hear their heart stop beating. I love that shit." That's the reason Phil Leonetti kept his face black out everywhere he went. Not to make light of the guy's situation, but he was dealing with fucking Norman Bates everywhere he went. And not to mention, dude, to me, and this is just a side note or a personal observation, Nicky Scarfo looks like the fucking love child of Steve Buscemi and Peter Lorre. Like he or Don Knotts maybe. I don't know. He looks like a combination of the three. And imagine that coming into your room with a butcher knife. Nah, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? I'm good. That right there was Nicky Scarfo, one of the most feared and bloodthirsty people, not just in the Gambino family, but in the mob. And now that footnote is out of the way, which I'm sorry I didn't bring it up earlier, but so all these things to basically give you, and there's many more key players, but as so many things that I talk about on these mobcasts, it would take me a literal calendar year to even get through a fraction of the criminal infractions these people have done. Hell, even just listing their names, because it was just such a expanse enterprise, such a huge thing. And so that's why we have to break these mobcasts and videos up into so many. But I would love to sit here and talk about them all day, though, because it's very interesting. But man, the Gambino family was the slice of the 5 family pie that was definitely the loudest. And there's no way around that. And they were the most known, and they'll probably always be the most known unless another gang war breaks out. But with that being said, I will at some point in the future do an entire mobcast. Probably the next family I'm going to do it about is probably the Genovese family, when that time comes around. But yeah, so that was my little rundown of a few key players in the Gambino family. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I know I did, but that goes without saying because there was a bunch of psychos with guns and knives. No, everybody else, everyone who's been following my mobcast, everyone who has been keeping up with my books and my videos and sharing them and commenting, guys, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it so much. For those of you who say you enjoy my voice, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I never knew that would be a thing, but here we are. Everyone who has just been supportive beyond explanation, thank you very much. My book, The Gatekeepers, Part 1 and 2, are available on Amazon right now. Gatekeepers by A.P. Fanini and The Gatekeepers Part 2, or The Gatekeepers Entry to Warm Barrels Cold Blood. So please go check those out if you guys like them. I have more projects I'm working on right now. I am actually, for a large majority of you, I'm making an audio book. I'm going to be narrating it. I'm going to be voicing all of the characters. I'm going to be doing it all the way through. I'm probably going to go through about 17 gallons of water, and my vocal cords are probably going to look like, I don't know, that old ass rope in your garage with grease on it. That's what it's going to look like. And I know, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of this. I can't wait to get started. The time I have to get started on the prologue, first chapter, and so on and so forth is probably going to be around Tuesday. I'd probably say Tuesday, the 7th of September. And I'll probably get started there. I hope to be done with that book and hopefully mixed and mastered and out into Amazon or wherever I'm going to sell it. Hopefully be done with that by the end of the month. I would love to say it'd be done in like 2 weeks or something, but I do have a job. And on top of that, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm going to be doing a lot of editing within the talk. So I want to make sure that when this audio product comes out, when this audio book comes out of The Gatekeepers, I want to make sure that the listener is taken directly to where I want them to be taken. And not only is it going to be like easier for them, for those who enjoy audiobooks, but like it gives me more of an opportunity to introduce you to the world of the entire mobster world of The Gatekeepers through a different faction of sense. And I'm going to do my best. I'm going to put 110%, 120% into it to make sure that it is a phenomenal audiobook. And you have my personal guarantee. And if I don't do it, then I don't know. I'll eat one of my shoes. No, I'm not going to eat one of my shoes. Fuck that. I'll come up with something. But we got a trust pact. I'll take care of you, I promise. But it's going to be good. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait. Also, as a project that I am working on steadily, I won't say slowly but surely because I am making progress, is I am making an entire musical album for The Gatekeepers. So most, like movies have a soundtrack, this book is going to have a soundtrack. I know that sounds a little out of the box, nonchalant, and nearly for some impossible, but I feel like I have a great vision of where this album is going to go, and so I'm going to give it to you guys. Trust me, I'm not even going to tell you anything else about it. You're going to love it. What am I saying? You're going to love this shit. It's going to be a good album. Gatekeepers, the album, coming as soon as I possibly can, starting on the audiobook Tuesday of this, next week. I'm going to make sure that this book goes out. Website is coming out too. And this website is not just going to be about me or bio or books. It's going to be interactive too. And, should have put that phone on silent. Anyway, it's going to be interactive for all the people who are going to be, taking part in it. So there's a lot coming. And for those of you who haven't signed up for my mailing list, please make sure you do that, because all of the notifications that I make when it comes to the videos and Mobcast, I send them straight to the email a lot of the times. And that is also going to be routed not just to my Facebook now, but it's going to be routed directly to the website. So make sure you guys do that. So without further ado, I must close this Mobcast. You guys, once again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for staying with me today. Thank you for hanging out. Another Mobcast will be to you shortly. I had to make it a little late because of the Hurricane Ida, but whatever. So yeah, until next time, this has been AP Fanini. You guys have a great day. All right? All right.